Welcome to Fortune Forecast. I am Daisy, your hostess, and you are in my book playlist. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Glad you found us. And to our Fortune community, welcome back. We have been going through the pages of the book titled The Secret of the Ages by Robert Collier. It was published in 1926, and it is in the public domain. If you are new and if this is the first time you land on this video and you would like to get this whole book, I invite you to visit my book playlist and catch up. The other thing I would like to mention with this book and many others that you'll find on this channel is that there is nothing new under the sun. Even when we look at fashion has this essence of like coming back around, but it may never look like what it did when it first was introduced. What we see is a reintroduction for today's eyes, for today's people. And it is like when we read some of our ancient theosophy books, such as the Bible, maybe the Bhagavad Gita, and others, where we get to read wisdoms of those times. We get to kind of walk back into a culture, and we get to come back forward into this culture. But yet there is something there that does not change, something pure. When we extract it, we find the story of life and the wisdom of how we can transcend and move on. And interesting then when we embrace the science, it's not like the principles of the science to be discovered are not here. It's just that we have not awakened to that knowledge. It is a progression. It is as if the child needs to learn how to understand the muscular structure of being able to crawl, then to do squats, and then to push the frame up, and then to take that step forward, and then to take the next one, and then to run, and then to understand his body, and then to become more and do more, whether through gymnastics or bodybuilding. And then what else? Pushing the mind. What else? Pushing the spirit. What else? And it is about transformation. So I love these books because it offers an opportunity to see that there is nothing new under the sun, yet mind is ever exploring and expanding. And it is our desire to transcend our current situation and explore more. And I personally love it very much, and I hope that you do too. It doesn't take a smart person to look around and see the plight of humanity, and perhaps trying to figure out, how can I help? Or how can I show someone their inner value? And how can you impart to a human being that they are enough, and that in their own way, they are more than enough, and that there is still more that they can be and become if they cultivate those beautiful virtues. Am I enough? A daughter, a mother, a sister, a neighbor to someone in my community. Do I need to be anything more? I am. And that's what's most important. Okay, my dear one, we're going to move on now to the next section here, which is in volume 7, and the title is The Medicine Delusion. We start off with a quote from Shakespeare. I find the medicine worse than the malady. We are getting rid of the drug illusion, declared Dr. Woods Hutchinson, the noted medical writer of America, at a luncheon given on June 6, 1925, by the English-speaking Union to 700 American and Canadian doctors assembled in London, England. We are willing even to subscribe to the dictum of Oliver Wendell Holmes, the doctor added, that if 99% of all drugs we possess were thrown into the sea, it would be a good thing for the human race. but rather hard on the fishes. Sir Arbuthnot Lane, surgeon to King George, seconded Dr. Hutchinson's remarks. They might say, he went on, that he was trying to establish a suicide club for doctors. I practically came to that because as the public became educated in matters of health, the medical profession might disappear. It was in fact an anomaly that a medical profession should exist. If people were healthy, there was no reason to have doctors at all. 25 years ago, the charms of the patent medicine fakir and the incantations of the Indian medicine man were in the heyday of their popularity. So long as you talked about their aches and pains, their diseases and ailments, people would buy any kind of nostrum that an unscrupulous fakir chose to palm off upon them. Patent medicine manufacturers made fabulous fortunes selling cheap whiskey adulterated with burnt sugar and water, under 100 different names for $1 the bottle. You could hardly pick up a magazine or newspaper without seeing a dozen of their lurid ads. The day of the Indian medicine man and street corner fakir has passed, and for a time, thanks to the crusade against them led by Colliers and backed by a number of the reputable magazines, patent medicine manufacturers suffered an eclipse. But they are back again today in a more respectable guise. Pick up almost any small town paper and you will find a dozen sovereign remedies for a tired woman or fretful child or run-down man. Concoctions, most of them containing just enough alcohol to give you a pleasant sense of stimulation, enough burnt sugar to color them, and a whole lot of water. But if that were all, no great harm would be done. If the peddling of drugs depended entirely or even mostly on patent medicine advertisers, the end of it would soon be in sight. But it doesn't. The worst offenders of all are the ones who, of all people, would know better. Some of the doctors. Understand, I don't mean all of them, and I don't mean the best of them. There are thousands of them like Dr. Woods Hutchinson who have the courage to get up and say that medicine itself cannot cure disease, that it never has cured disease, that nature is the only healer. Drugs can give you temporary relief from pain, yes. They can cleanse, yes. But as for curing anything, the drug is not made that can do it. The principal good that the administering of a drug has is in its effect upon the mind of the patient. Men have been taught for so many years that drugging is the only way to cure disease, that when you give them something, they believe they're going to be cured, and to the extent that they believe, they are cured. The best proof of that is to let two patients suffering from the same complaint go to two different physicians, the one a doctor of the regular school, the other a homeopath. The regular doctor will administer a dose containing 10,000 times as much of the mother drug as the homeopath. In fact, there is so slight a trace of any drug in the homeopath's prescription that it might be called none at all. Yet, it frequently happens that his patient will respond just as readily to his denatured dose as the other will to his drug. Dr. Gore, in a recent issue of Pearson's magazine, said, "A few years ago, there appeared an article in the Atlantic Monthly written by a young woman physician who was with the Red Cross in Russia. Immediately following the Kerensky Revolution, the Russian peasants who, for the first time in their lives, found that they could keep what they earned, began to think of going to doctors for ailments which had afflicted them for years, but which they could never before afford to have treated. Within 2 weeks' time, this young physician exhausted her supply of medicine. But the rush of peasant patients continued, and she was reduced to the placebo idea of administering colored waters with a slight amount of single drug, quinine, if I recall correctly. For several weeks, she obtained such wonderful results in every conceivable form of affliction that she said her faith in specific medication was completely lost. In a dispatch from Rome to the New York Herald Tribune, under date of June 15, 1926, I read, "Under the skeptical eyes of local doctors, Don Luigi Garofalo, a priest in the Quarto sector of Naples, alleges that he is curing all the ills that flesh is heir to, from pneumonia to broken bones, by a practical application of the theory derived from the text. Man is of dust, and to dust he shall return." Don Luigi argues that from a homeopathic viewpoint, dust should be a curative element. So from dust taken from the reddish earth near Poznoli, which contains traces of sulfur and copper, he makes pills for the afflicted, but he contends that any other earth will do. The cures, most of which have been effected by means of red earth, include the healing of broken limbs, tubercular cases, toothache, internal lesions, heart diseases, mumps, paralysis, and fevers. Of course, it is not to be inferred from this that reliance can be placed upon red earth, or any other kind of earth, to cure you of any ill. But it shows that even so common, ordinary a thing as a bit of dirt can be used to arouse people from the lethargic condition in which sickness so frequently leaves them, and give them the power to help themselves. Take another case. Your doctor prescribes regular doses of some drug. You take it once. It has the desired effect. You take it again. The effect is not quite as so pronounced. You keep it up, and in a short time, the drug seems to have lost its efficacy. Why? The same chemical elements are there, and if you mix the same chemical elements in a retort, you will get the same result whether you do it once or 1,000 times. Why doesn't it work the same way with drugs and your body? Because the strongest factor in bringing about the desired effect in the beginning was your belief, yours and that of your doctor. But as you kept on, your belief began to falter until presently it died away altogether. You may have hoped, but the active belief suggestions to your subconscious mind had stopped carrying conviction. Dr. Richard C. Cabot, professor of medicine at Harvard University, in a recent address, declared that 3/4 of all illnesses are cured without the victims even knowing they have had them. Proof of this contention is to be found in post-mortem examinations, which time after time reveal indelible and unmistakable traces of disease which the subject has conquered all unknowingly. 90% of all typhoid cures itself, as does 75% of all pneumonia. In fact, out of a total of 215 diseases known to medical science, there are only about 8 or 9 which doctors conquer. The rest conquer themselves. He went on to say that if nature, assisted by the proper mental and emotional moods, is capable of curing an ulcer in 3 or 4 weeks, why isn't it possible for the same force to heal a similar ulcer in a few minutes, when the curative processes have been speeded up abnormally? Great physicians have, on numerous occasions, maintained that there is no science in medicating people. In preventative medicine, yes. In surgery, in obstetrics, in a core of different lines that fall under heading of medical profession. But the art of drugging is little ahead of where it was in the Middle Ages, when Egyptian mummies were in great demand among druggists and powdered farro was considered the greatest remedy for any ill that flesh was heir to. Every day brings the discovery of some new drug, and the consequent dictum that the remedy previously described was all a mistake, that it had little or no real value whatever. One doctor says, "A medicine that will not kill you if you take an overdose is no good." Another, "The most prominent doctors now claim that there is not a single drug will do what it has been prescribed for in the past." Dr. Douglas White, writing in The Churchman, sums it up thus: "All cure of every disease is spiritual. Healing can never be imposed from without by either the surgeon or physician. It is the living organism which, helped by the skill of the one or the other, is enabled to work its way back to health. The whole principle of healing in all cases is the vis medicatrix naturae, and when we speak of nature, we are only personifying the principle of life which Christians call God. In the medical record of September 25, 1920, Dr. Joseph Byrne, professor of neurology at Fordham University Medical School, said, "At a conservative estimate, it may be admitted that of all the ailments for which relief is sought, 90% or over are self-limited and tend to get well. It may also be admitted that in over 90% of all human ailments, the psychic is the dominating factor." In other words, mind is the healer. Drugs can sometimes make its work easier by removing obstructions, by killing off parasites, but the regular use of drugs is far more likely to harm than to heal. We might well quote to the druggist the old Hindu proverb, "God gives the mango, the farmer plants the seed. God cures the patient, the doctor takes the fees." In the Great War, the one drug that most proved worth was iodine. And what is iodine? A cleanser. It killed germs. It cleansed wounds, but it has no healing power, and no healing was expected of it. It did all that was asked. It cauterized, cleansed, so that nature, mind, could do its own healing unobstructed. That would seem to be the most that should be expected of any drug. Kill the germs of sickness or disease, cleanse so that nature can more easily do its rebuilding. And that is where the use of drugs should stop. Mind works best when it is interfered with least, when we throw ourselves entirely upon it for support, rather than share the responsibility with some outside agency. Dr. Burnett Ray, a well-known English specialist, addressing a large audience on the subject of spiritual healing and medical science, said the term spiritual healing was sometimes used in a manner which seemed to imply that there was a form of healing which was of non-spiritual character, and that spiritual healing was incompatible with or opposed to medical practice. Healing could never be regarded as purely physical process. He would go so far as to say that healing was always effected through the control of the mind, and medicinal remedies only set the machinery of the mind in motion. We are too apt to think of medical science as concerned with drugs or appliances and operations. These might completely pass away during the next 20 or 50 years. It is not through drugs that the medical profession has done so much of good for the world. It is not through drugs that they have improved the general health, cleansed of plague spots, cut down infant mortality, lengthened the average life expectancy of mankind by 15 years. It is by scotching disease at its very source. It is by getting rid of artificially created unwholesome conditions, getting back to natural, wholesome conditions. What is it causes typhus? Filth, an entirely unwholesome condition man-made. And how do doctors prevent the spread of typhus? By cleaning up, by getting back to natural, wholesome conditions. What is it causes typhoid? Impure water. And its prevention is simply the purifying of water, getting back to nature's perfect, wholesome supply. Yellow fever has been practically stamped out of existence. Typhus is almost a forgotten plague, except in such backward places as parts of Russia and Asia. Malaria has been conquered, and doctors predict that in another generation, tuberculosis will be an almost forgotten malady. How were these wonderful results brought about? Not through drugs, but by cleaning up, cleaning out swamps and filth, purifying water, building drainage systems, making everything around about as clean and wholesome as nature itself. Cleansing, purity, sunshine. God gave us in abundance all that is necessary for perfect health: clean air, pure water, clear sunshine. All we need to do is to keep these pure and clean and to use all we possibly can of them. The greatest good the medical profession has done mankind is in discovering the value of these gifts of God and showing us how to use them. The Chinese have long had the right idea. They pay their physicians to keep them well, not to cure them of sickness. And the thing that made the reputation of such men as Gorgias, Reed, Flexner, Carrel was not their cure of disease, but their prevention of it. That way lies the future of medicine, bringing our surroundings back to the natural, wholesome conditions for which we were created. That way lies health and happiness for all. Cleanliness inside and out, clean air, pure water, plenty of sunshine, and right thinking. In the next chapter, I shall try to show you how you can apply the illimitable power of mind, hopefully towards the successful treatment of disease. Stay right here. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this channel with your friends, and leave me a comment. Okay, let's move on now to Volume 7, Chapter 24. The Gift of the Magi. A quote by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. Sweep up the debris of decaying faiths. Sweep down the cobwebs of worn-out beliefs, and throw your soul wide open to the light of reason and of knowledge. Be not afraid to thrust aside half-truths and grasp the whole. All over the world, sick, weak, and devitalized men and women are searching for health and strength. By the hundreds of thousands, they drag their weary and aching boxes around or languish on sick beds, waiting for someone to bring health to them corked up in a bottle. But real, lasting health was never found in pill boxes or medicine bottles. There is one method, and only one, by which it can be gained and kept. That method is by using the power of the subconscious mind. For a long time, the doctors pooh-poohed any such idea. Then, as the evidence piled up, they grudgingly admitted that nervous troubles and even functional disorders might be cured by the mind. Even now, there are some who, as Bernard Shaw put it, had rather bury a whole hillside ethically than see a single patient cured unethically. They will give credit to no method of healing outside the tenets of their own school. Yet, as Warren Hilton has it in Applied Psychology, all the literature of medicine, whether of ancient or modern times, abounds in illustrations of the power of the mind over the body in health and in disease. And medical science has always based much of its practice on this principle. No reputable school of medicine ever failed to instruct its students in practical applications of the principle of mental influence at the bedside of their patients. A brisk and cheery manner, a hopeful countenance, a supremely assured and confident demeanor. These things have always been regarded by the medical profession as but second in importance to sanitation and material remedies, while the value of the sugar-coated bread pill when the diagnosis was uncertain has long been recognized. The properly trained nurse has always been expected to supplement the efforts of the attending physician by summoning the mental forces of the patients to his aid. She, therefore, surrounds the patient with an atmosphere of comfortable assurance, and by constantly advising him of his satisfactory progress toward speedy recovery, she seeks to instill hope, confidence, and mental effort. To quote Dr. Dedama, the ideal physician irradiates the sick chamber with the light of his cheerful presence. He may not be hilarious, he is not indifferent, but he has an irrepressible good nature which lifts the patient out of the slough of despond and places his feet on the firm land of health. In desperate cases, even a little harmless levity may be beneficial. A well-timed jest may break up a congestion. A pun may add pungency to the sharpest stimulant. Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes reduced this principle to its cash equivalent when he said that a cheerful smile might be worth $5,000 a year to a physician. Today, psychotherapy, or the healing of bodily disease by mental influence, has been unqualified endorsement of the American Therapeutic Society, the only national organization in America devoted exclusively to therapeutics. It has the enthusiastic support of men of such recognized international leadership in the scientific world and in the medical profession as Freud, Jung, Bleuler, Brewer, Prince, Janet Babinski, Putnam, Garish, Sidis, Dubois, Mustenberg, Jones, Brill, Donnelly, Waterman, and Taylor. The present attitude of reputable science toward the principle that the mind controls all bodily operations is, then, one of positive conviction. The world's foremost thinkers accept its truth. The interest of enlightened man and women everywhere is directed toward the mind as a powerful curative force and as a regenerative influence of hitherto undreamed of a resource. The more progressive physicians everywhere now admit that there is practically no limit to how far mind can go in the cure of disease. As Dr. Walsh of Fordham University puts it, analysis of the statistics of diseases are cured by mental influence shows that its results have been more strikingly manifest in organic than in the so-called nervous or functional diseases. Everyone admits that the mind influences the body somewhat, for everyone has seen others grow pale with fear or red with anger. Everyone has felt the stopping of the heartbeats at some sudden fright, the quickened breathing, and the thumping of the heart caused by excitement. These and 100 other evidences of the influence of mind over matter are common to all of us, and everyone will admit them. But everyone does not know that our whole bodies seem to be nothing more or less than the outward expression of our thought. We sit in a drought, and education teaches us we should have a cold or fever, so we have a cold or fever. We eat something which we have been told is indigestible, and immediately we are assailed with pains. We see another yawn, and our impulse is to follow suit. In the same way, when we hear of sickness around about us, the fear of it visualizes it in our own minds, and we too have it. The fear of these things seems to bring them out, the mental suggestion sent through to our subconscious minds. We have been educated in a medical age to think that most diseases are infectious or contagious. So the mere sight of a diseased person makes most of us withdraw into ourselves like a turtle within his shell. We fear we shall catch it, when one of the great dangers of disease is the very fear of it. For years, it has been accepted as an acknowledged fact that anyone trapped in a mine or other airtight compartment would presently die of carbon dioxide poisoning, lack of oxygen. Now comes Houdini to prove that death for lack of oxygen is not necessary at all. Fear and not poisoning by carbon dioxide causes the death of miners and others trapped in airtight compartments. In the opinion of Houdini, according to an Associated Press dispatch of August 6, 1926. Houdini had himself sunk in a sealed coffin in a swimming pool, without chance for a breath of outside air to reach him, and stayed there for an hour and a half, although, according to all previous scientific belief, he should have been dead at the end of 4 minutes. Yet Dr. W.J. McConnell of the United States Department of Mines, who examined Houdini before and after the experiment reported no marked physical reaction from the test, and Houdini himself said he felt only a slight dizziness when he was released from the coffin. "Anyone can do it," said Houdini. "The important thing is to believe that you are safe." The Chinese have a saying that when the plague comes, 5,000 people may die of the plague, but 50,000 will die of the fear of it. Did you ever hurt a limb or a finger so that you thought you couldn't move it, and then, under the stress of some sudden emotion, forget all about the hurt and presently wake to find yourself using the finger or the limb just as readily and as painlessly as though there had never been anything wrong with it? I have before me a clipping from the New York Times of March 29, 1925, telling of a cripple who had been paralyzed for 6 years, but under the spur of sudden fear, he ran up a stairway unaided, without crutch or cane. He had been treated in a number of hospitals, but because of an injury to his spine received in an auto accident, had been unable to walk without crutches or canes for 6 years. The patient in the bed next to his own suddenly went crazy and attacked him, and in his fear, this paralytic leaped from his bed and ran up a flight of stairs. According to the report, the sudden fright cured him. Take the miracles of Lourdes, or of Saint Anne of Beaupre, or of any of the dozen of shrines that dot the world. What is it that effects the cures? 2 things: desire and faith. "What was that I should do unto thee?" the Savior asked the blind man, who kept following and crying out to him, "Lord, that I should receive my sight." And again, of the cripple at the pool of Bethesda, Jesus asked, "Wouldst thou be made whole?" Sounds like foolish questioning, doesn't it? But you remember the story of the famous saint of Italy, who traveled from town to town, healing the lame, the halt, and the blind. A pilgrim, hastening to a town where the saint was expected, met 2 lame beggars hurrying away. He asked them the reason for their haste. To be told, to his astonishment, it was because the saint was coming to town. As they put it, "He will surely heal us, and where will our livelihood be then?" So it is why with many people today, not beggars, mind you, but people in every walk of life, they have become so wedded to their ailments, enjoy poor health so thoroughly, that they are secretly a bit proud of it. Take away their complaints, and they would be lost without them. You must have the sincere desire first, that is prayer. Then the faith, the kind of faith that Jesus meant when he said, "Whatsoever ye ask for when ye pray, believe that ye receive it, and ye shall have it." Mind you, not believe you're going to receive it. Believe that ye receive it. Now, this very minute. Know that the real you, the image of you held in universal mind, in short, the truth concerning every organ in your body, is perfect. Know the truth. Believe that you have this perfect image. On the day that you can truly believe this, carry this sincere conviction to your subconscious mind. On that day, you will be perfect. This is the faith that Jesus meant when he said, "Thy faith had made thee whole." This is the faith that is responsible for the miracles of Lourdes, for miraculous healings everywhere. It matters not whether you be Catholic or Protestant, Jew or Gentile. Desire and faith such as these will heal you. A month or 2 ago, I read in the newspapers of a farmer, blind for 2 years, who went out in the field and prayed that he should receive his sight. At the end of the 2nd day, his sight was completely restored. He was a Protestant. He went to no shrine, just out under the sky and prayed to God. Today, I have before me a clipping from the New York Sun of February 23, 1926, telling of Patrolman Dennis O'Brien of the Jersey City Police Force, who at the end of a novena to Our Lady of Help at the monastery of St. Michael's in Union City, recovered the use of his legs, which had been paralyzed since the time 2 years before when a bullet had entered the base of his spine, severing the cord of motor and sensory nerves. He was a Catholic. Then, here's one of the New York Sun of June 26, 1926, telling how Miss Elsie Meyer of the Bronx, New York, was healed overnight of a tumorous growth that had troubled her for months. I realized last fall that there was an unusual growth on my body, she said. It might have resulted from the strain of lifting a trunk. I wanted to know what it was, and I first went to a doctor who informed me it was a tumorous growth and likely to become serious. But I would not be frightened and refuse to receive any medical remedies in the way of cure. I have been a believer in faith healing and member of the Union Society, a branch of the New Thought organization, for a number of years. So I went to a New Thought practitioner. While this seemed to help me, the tumorous growth remained. I guess my faith wasn't strong enough at the time. That was last fall. I came to the Congress with the same growth, apparently unaffected by any attempts to cure it. But after attending the healing meeting at the Congress yesterday, I left with a firm faith that I would get the healing I had asked for. When I retired, I noticed the tumor was still on my body, but when I awoke this morning, it had disappeared. The chronicles of every religion are full of just such miracles, and the reason for them is the same in every case: prayer and faith. Given these, no healing is impossible. Suppose we go back for a moment to the lowly amoeba, the first bit of animal life upon the earth. I know not whether you are fundamentalist or evolutionist. The facts are a bit harder to prove from the evolution side of it, so let us argue from that angle. The amoeba, as you will recall from Chapter 1, is the lowest form of animal life known to scientists, a sort of jellyfish with but a single cell, without brains, without intelligence, possessing only life. No one would ever contend that this jellyfish could improve itself. No one would argue that it developed the next form of life out of its own mind or ideas. Yet, according to science, the next form of life did develop from this jelly-like mass. The amoeba certainly was not responsible for doing it, and it couldn't develop itself. So the conclusion is forced upon us that some outside intelligence must have done it. But there were no other living creatures. The amoeba was alone of all animal life upon the planet. The condition of the water and atmosphere was such that few, if any, other forms of animals could have sustained life at that time. So the intelligence which developed the next form of animal life must have been the same that created the amoeba, that first brought life to this planet. That intelligence is variously called God, providence, nature, the life principle, mind, etc. For our purposes here, let us call it universal mind. Having formed life here on earth, universal mind proceeded to develop it. Starting with a single cell, it built cell upon cell, changing each form of life to meet the different conditions of atmosphere and environment that the cooling of the earth crust brought about. When the multicellular structure became complicated, it gave a brain to it to direct the different functions, just as you put a governor on a steam engine. When land appeared and the receding tides left certain animals high and dry for periods of hours, it gave these both lungs and gills, the one for the air, the other for the water. When the creatures began to prey upon one another, it gave one speed, another a shell, a third an ink-like fluid, that each in its own way might escape and survive. But always it progressed. Each new stage of life was an improvement over the previous one, and always it showed its resourcefulness, its ability to meet any need. Finally, as the culmination of all its efforts, it made man, a creature endowed not only with a brain like that of the lower animals, but with the power of reason, made in his image and likeness, sharing infinite intelligence, himself a creature and a part of universal mind. All through the creation, from the time of the one-celled amoeba right up to man, every scientist will admit that the directing intelligence of universal mind was on the job every minute, that it formed the models on which each new and different kind of animal was made, that each of these models was perfect, the one model best fitted to cope with the conditions it had to confront. Certainly, when it came to man, it is not likely to have been any less successful in forming a perfect model than it was in making the tiger or the elephant. So we can take it, I assume, that all will admit that man, as formed by universal mind, is perfect, that the idea of man, as it exists in universal mind, is perfect in every particular. And universal mind, from the beginning, has never taken a step backward, has never stood still. Always it has progressed. So it would seem safe to assume that man is not going backward now, that he is a more perfect creature than he was 5,000, 10,000, or 100,000 years ago, that he is constantly drawing nearer and nearer the likeness of his creator. The next step seems just as logical. If there was inherent in even the earliest and lowest forms of life the power to develop whatever means was requisite to meet each new emergency, such as a shell, or lungs, or legs, or wings, if this power is still inherent in the lower forms of life, such as the plant parasites referred to in a previous chapter, does it not seem a certainty that we have the same power within ourselves if only we knew how to call it forth? Jesus proved that we have, and his disciples and followers added still further proof. After the 3rd century of the Christian era, that power was allowed to lapse through disuse. But of late years, thousands have been taking advantage of it for themselves and for others through psychology or religion. A new church has been founded upon the words of James, "Faith without works is dead." It differs from most churches in that it teaches that Jesus meant all that he said when he commanded his disciples to go preach, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. Freely ye have received, freely give." The sick, the lame, the halt, and the blind have flocked to it literally by the 100,000s. That thousands have been cured is beyond dispute. That many were cases which had been given up by the medical fraternity, the doctors quite frankly admit. And the basis of all their cures is that there is nothing miraculous about the cure of disease at all, that it is divinely natural, that it requires merely understanding, that mind is the only creator, and that the only image universal mind holds of your body is a perfect image, neither young nor old, but full of health, of vigor, of beauty, and vitality. That all you have to do when assailed by disease is to go back to universal mind for a new conception of its perfect image, for the truth concerning your body, just as you would go back to the principle of mathematics for the truth concerning any problem that worked out incorrectly. When you can make your subconscious mind copy after this universal image, the truth, instead of the diseased image you are holding in your thoughts, your sickness will vanish like the mere dream it is. Does that sound too deep? Then look at it this way. When you think an organ is diseased, it is your conscious mind that thinks this. Inevitably, it sends this thought through to your subconscious mind, and the latter proceeds to build the cells of that organ along this imperfect, diseased model. Change the model, in other words, change your belief, and your subconscious mind will go back again to building along right lines. Your body, is simply an aggregation of millions upon millions of protons and electrons held together by mind. They are the universal substance of all about us, the plastic life form which the sculptor mind shapes the forms you see. To quote the New York Sun, man's body is made up of trillions of miniature solar systems, each with whirling planets and a central sun. These tiny systems are the atoms of modern science. The atoms of all elements are made up of protons and electrons in varying quantities and arranged in various ways. But what are protons and electrons? The masters of physics have succeeded in weighing and measuring them. We know that they carry the smallest possible charges of electricity, and we are learning much about the way they behave. But students are beginning to doubt that they have real substance, that they are anything one could hit with a Lilliputian hammer. Dr. H.G. Gale of the University of Chicago, addressing the Ohio Academy of Science the other day, said there was a good reason to believe that electrons were composed entirely of electricity and that their mass or weight was only a manifestation of electrical force. According to this view, nothing exists in the universe except electricity and perhaps ether. Your subconscious mind partakes of the creative power of mind, and because of that, it is daily, hourly, changing the particles of electrical energy which constitute your body to conform to the image you hold before it. The clay cannot reply to the sculptor, no more than these tiny particles of electricity. Your body has nothing to say as to whether it shall be diseased or crippled. It is mind that decides this. Jesus understood this, and it was on the basis of this understanding that he was able to cure any and all manner of disease. He was not a magician or occult wonder worker aiming to set aside the laws of nature. He was a teacher demonstrating those laws. He didn't pick the learned scribes and Pharisees and let them in on the secret of his wonder working. On the contrary, the men he chose were simple fisher folk, and to them he gave the understandings that enabled them, too, to cure the sick, the halt, and the blind. For what is sickness? An illusion, a mortal dream, merely the absence of health. Bring back that healthy image, and the sickness immediately disappears. Universal mind never created disease. The only image it knows of man is the truth, the perfect image. The only idea it has of your body is a perfect, healthy idea. For God is of purer eyes than to behold evil. Then where does disease come from? Who created it? No one did. It is a mere illusion, just as if you think a pin is sticking you and you concentrate your thoughts on the pain, it becomes unbearable. Yet when you investigate, you find that no pin was sticking you at all, merely a hair or a bit of cinder lodged against the skin. How often have you had some fancied pain only to have it promptly disappear when your physician assured you there was nothing wrong with you at all? It would be the same way with all sickness, all pain, if you would understand that it is merely fear or suggestion working on your conscious mind, and that if you will deny this belief of pain or sickness, your subconscious mind will speedily make that denial good. Don't render that mind impotent by thoughts of fear, doubt, and anxiety. If you do, it is going to get like a working crew which is constantly being stopped by strikes or walkouts or changes of plans. It will presently get discouraged and stop trying. To quote Dr. Geo E. Pitzer again, in proper, healthy, or normal conditions of life, the objective mind and the subjective mind act in perfect harmony with each other. When this is the case, healthy and happy conditions always prevail. But these two minds are not always permitted to act in perfect harmony with each other. This brings mental disturbances, excites physical wrongs, functionals, and organic diseases. Our unconscious mind is a tremendous storage plant full of potential energy, which can be expanded for beneficial or harmful ends. Like every apparatus for storing of power, it can be man's precious ally, if man is familiar with it and hence not afraid of it. Ignorance and fear, on the other hand, can transform a live electric wire into an engine of destruction and death. Even as long ago as Napoleon's day, men had begun to get an inkling of this. "Think that you are well," said the astute Talleyrand, "instead of thinking that you are sick." And the formula of the Quakers is that an energetic soul is master of the body which it loves. So keep in mind the one basic fact that covers the whole ground, that mind is all. There is no other cause. When you drive the belief in disease from your subconscious mind, you will drive away the pain and all other symptoms with it. Few sick people have any idea how much they can do for themselves. There is an old saying that every man is a fool or his own physician at 40. When the science of mind is more generally understood, that saying will become literally true. Every man will find within himself the mind which healeth all thy diseases. For every function of your body is governed by your mind. When sickness or pain assails you, deny it. Cling steadfastly to the one idea that covers all, that universal mind made your every organ perfect, that the only image of each organ now in universal mind is the perfect image, and that this perfect idea is endowed with resources sufficient to meet any need. Jesus' command, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect," was meant to be taken literally. And it can be followed literally if we will model our bodies upon the image he holds of us in universal mind. We are all sculptors, you know, but instead of marble or clay, our material is the plastic energy, protons and electrons, of which we and everything in this world about us are made. What are you making of it? What image are you holding in mind? Images of sickness, of poverty, of limitation? Then you are reproducing these in your life. Banish them. Forget them. Never let them enter your thought, and they will never again manifest themselves in your life. You admit that mind influences your body to some extent, but you think your physical organs hold the preponderance of power, so you depend upon them and make yourself their slave. "Know ye not," says Paul, "that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom ye obey?" By holding before yourself the thought that your organs are the master, you make them your master and deprive yourself of the directing intelligence of your subconscious mind. When an organ ceases to function properly, you try to doctor it, when the part that needs attention is your mind. If you are running an electric machine and the current becomes weak or is switched off, you don't take the machine apart or oil it or tamper it with to make it run better. You go to the source of the power to find what is wrong there. In the same way, when anything seems wrong with the functioning of your body, the place to investigate is your subconscious mind. Your stomach has no intelligence, nor your heart, nor any other of your organs. Your liver, for instance, could never figure out how much sugar should be turned into your blood every minute to keep your bodily temperature at 98 degrees. When you are sitting in a room that is warmed to only 65 degrees, it doesn't know how much more sugar is required to keep that temperature normal when you go out into a driving gale 10 below zero. Yet, it supplies the requisite amount, neither too much nor too little. And it does it instantaneously. Where does it get that information? You don't know. No mortal man could figure it out in a year's time. It gets it from your subconscious mind. It gets both the information and the directions to use it. And every other of your bodily organs gets its information in the same place. Your muscles are not self-acting. Take away mind, and those muscles are just like any other bit of matter, lifeless, inert. They have nothing to say as to what they shall do. They merely obey the behest of mind. Have you ever seen one of those presses at work in a newspaper plant? They seem almost human in their intelligence. At one end, great rolls of paper feed in. At the other, out comes the finished newspaper, folded, ready for delivery. Everything is automatic. Everything as perfect as machinery can be made. The fingers that hold the papers seem almost lifelike in their deftness. Shut off the life-giving electric current, and what happens? The machinery is powerless. Take away the directing human intelligence, and how long before that wonderful machine would be a mass of scrap, mere bits of steel and rubber? How long could it function of itself? So it is with your body. A wonderful mechanism, the most complicated, yet the most perfect in the world. But switch off the current of your mental dynamo, take away the intelligence that directs the working of your every organ, and what is left? A bit of bone and flesh, inert and useless. In the final analysis, your body is merely a piece of mechanism, dependent entirely upon mind. It has no power, no volition of its own. It does as mind tells it to, insofar as mind believes itself to be the master. Your eyes, for instance, are merely lenses which transmit light from the outer world to the brain within. They contract or elongate, they open or close, just as mind directs. And mind, in its turn, keeps them constantly nourished with new, life-giving blood, replacing old tissue, old cells, as fast as they wear out, rebuilding ever so that your eyes may continue to function perfectly as long as your conscious mind is dependent upon them for its impressions of outer objects. It doesn't matter how old you may be or how much you use them. Your eyes are like any other muscles of your body. They improve in strength with use. Give them but enough rest intervals for mind to repair and rebuild the used tissue. Keep before your subconscious mind the perfect image of eyes on which you expect it to rebuild. And you need never fear glasses. You need never worry about your eyes going back on you. What is it happens when your muscles refuse to work, fail to perform their functions properly? You are what has happened. You have switched off the current from some particular part. You have been holding the belief so long and so firmly that the muscles have the preponderance of power that your subconscious mind has come to believe it too. And when the nerve or muscle suffers an injury, the subconscious mind, at the suggestion of your conscious mind, gives up all dominion over it. All disease, all sickness, all imperfections of the human body are due to this one cause: your belief that your body is the master, that it can act on, that it can catch cold or become diseased without the consent of mind. This is the procuring cause of all suffering. One disease is no different from another in this. They are all due to that one erroneous belief. If you will deny the power of your body over your mind, you can destroy all fear of disease. And when the fear goes, the foundation of disease is gone. The way to begin is to refuse to believe or to heed any complaint from your body. Have no fear of climate or atmosphere, of dampness or drafts. It is only when you believe them unhealthy that they are so to you. When your stomach sends a report of distress, when it tells you that something you have eaten is disagreeing with it, treat it as you would an unruly servant. Remind it that it is not the judge of what is or is not good for it, that it has no intelligence, that it is merely a channel through which food you give it passes for certain treatment and selection, that if the food is not good, it has but to pass it through to the eliminatory organs as speedily as may be. Your stomach is entirely capable of doing this. Every organ you have is capable of withstanding any condition, given the right state of mind to direct it. The only reason that they succumb to sickness or disease or injury is because you tell them to. Men have fallen from great heights without injury. Men have taken the most deadly poison without harm. Men have gone through fire and flood and pestilence, not a scratch to show. And what men have done once, they can do it again. The fact that it has been done shows that your body does not need to suffer injury from these conditions. And if it does not need to, then it would seem that the only reason it ordinarily suffers is because your fear of injury is the thought you're holding before your subconscious mind, and therefore that is the thought that it images on your body. In a dispatch from Stockholm to the New York Herald Tribune, dated January 18, 1926, I read that Dr. Henry Marcus and Dr. Ernest Salhorn, Stockholm scientists, have been able, through hypnotic suggestion, to offset the effect of poisons on the human system to a marked degree. The scientists put 3 subjects into a hypnotic sleep and then administered drugs, carefully recording the effects on blood pressure and pulse, both with and without suggestion. When a drug which acts to increase blood pressure was administered without suggestion, the blood pressure readings ranged between 109 to 130, and pulse readings from 54 to 100. But when the drug was administered with the suggestion to the mind of the patient that it was merely so much harmless water, the blood pressures were from 107 to 116, and pulse readings all less than 67, from which one would judge that it was the patient's belief which affected him, far more than any power in the drug. Bear this in mind when anyone tells you that certain foods are not good for you. You can eat what you like, if you do it in moderation. Just remember that no matter what you eat, if you relish it, if you believe it to be good for you, it will be good for you. But you may say, is not this like the tenets of a well-known religion? What of that? If certain fundamental truths have been uncovered by another, why not use them, regardless of whether or not we agree with the philosophy from which they are taken? To quote again from Dr. Richard C. Cabot of the Harvard Medical School, "There need be no conflict. There is opportunity for all sincere, humble-minded effort. Let us have no persecutions and no interference with the spread of truth and light from any source. Indictments against movements as powerful and sincere as Christian Science and preventative medicine are anachronistic. Let us all get busy along our lines, with malice towards none, with charity for all. Let us bind up the nation's wounds." It has often seemed to me that if all the churches would take a leaf out of the book of ordinary business practice, forget their differences over dogma, and simply profit by the example that Mary Baker Eddy, discoverer and founder of Christian Science, has given them of building up an enormous following almost overnight, they would be much the better off thereby. For what was it brought men and women into the church in such vast numbers in the early day of Christianity? Healing. What was responsible for the phenomenal growth of the Christian Science Church? The healing of thousands of people of any and every kind of ill. What is it that people go to any church for? To pray and to find how to get an answer to their prayers. Show them the way to do this, Show them the way to heal themselves of all their ills and lacks, and you will need to worry no more about the crowded theaters and the empty churches. If this be treason, make the most of it. The moment any symptom of illness shows in your body, vigorously deny its existence. Say to yourself, my body has no intelligence, neither has any germ of disease. Therefore, neither my body nor the disease can tell me I'm sick. Mind is the only cause, and mind has directed them to make me sick. The only image of my body that mind knows is a perfect, vigorous, healthy image. And that is the only image I am going to build on. Then forget the image of disease. It is only an illusion and can be dispelled like any other illusion. Keep in your mind's eye the image of perfect health, of vigorous, boundless vitality. Your body cannot say it is sick. Therefore, when the belief of sickness assails you, it must come either from your conscious mind or from outside suggestion. In either event, it is your job to see that no belief of sickness reaches your subconscious mind, that no fear of it, no thought of it is imaged there. To treat one who has already succumbed to the belief of sickness, explain to him, as I have explained to you here, that his body has no power for sickness or for health, any more than a log of wood has, that his body is merely an aggregation of millions of electrons, particles of electrical energy, really subject wholly to his mind, that these particles of energy have neither substance nor intelligence, that they are constantly changing, and that the forms they take depend entirely upon the images he holds in his own mind. His body is, in short, a mental concept. It is an exact reflection of the thought he is holding in mind of it. If he has been sick, it is because he has been holding sickly, weak, and unhealthy thoughts in his mind. If he wishes to get well, it is first necessary for him to change his thought. Instead of doctoring the machine, he is to go direct to the powerhouse and change the current. Let him repeat to himself, night and morning, this little formula. There is no permanence to matter. The one surest thing about it is change. Every cell, every tissue in my body is constantly being renewed. The old, worn-out tissues are being torn down and carried away. New, perfect ones are replacing them. And the model on which those new organisms are being rebuilt is the perfect model that is held in divine mind. For God made man in his image. That image was perfect then, is perfect now. It is the only image that divine mind knows of me. It is the only image on which my subconscious mind is ever again going to pattern its rebuilding. Every minute of every day, I am growing more and more into the image of God, the true likeness he holds of me in his thought. If he will do that, if he will bear in mind that matter as much has no feeling, no intelligence, that it is the mind that feels, the mind that directs, and therefore he has nothing to fear from any external causes, his fear of the disease will vanish, and the patient does not exist who will not speedily recover when his fear of the disease is gone. Verily, verily, I say unto you, said Jesus, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. And again, this is the life eternal. Is, you will notice, not shall be. The mind is God's way of utilizing his energy. Says the Reverend William T. Walsh, rector of St. Luke's Church, New York City, in his book, Scientific Spiritual Healing. God evolved the subconscious mind. It is His gift to us like all else that we possess, and because it is from Him, we should give thanks and learn to use it intelligently. God has so fashioned us that we do not have to give conscious attention to the vital processes. He has given us what is called the subconscious mind, which looks after all the vital functions. This mind can receive commands from us and has a wonderful ability to carry them out. For it is a law that every thought tends to realize itself subconsciously in the mind. If you allow evil thoughts to remain, they are received by the subconscious, which tends to realize them in the body just as much as though they were good, wholesome, health-giving spiritual thoughts. For remember, the subconscious does not reason and judge. It only receives and obeys. When you have an accident, don't immediately think that you must be hurt. On the contrary, deny at once that you can be hurt. The denial will take away the creative power of your thought from any damaging condition. More than that, if you will immediately call to mind the fact that the only image of your body that universal mind holds is a perfect image, and that this is the image on which your subconscious mind is building, you will find that this subconscious mind will speedily rebuild any damaged parts in accordance with that image. As a matter of fact, if we could thoroughly realize that our bodies are made up merely of vortices of energy subject wholly to the control of mind, it should hurt us no more to run a knife through them than it does to run it through water. The water immediately resumes the shape of the vessel that holds it. Just so, our bodies should immediately resume the shape that the mind holds them in. But even with our present imperfect understanding, we can perform what the uninitiated would call miracles with our bodies, and each victory we win gives us a bit more of power over them. To conquer one disease condition makes it easier to ward off or to conquer other diseased conditions. The body cannot oppose us. It is only the bias of education and the suggestions of those about us that we have to combat. There is no necessity for disease. There is no necessity even for fatigue. They that wait upon the Lord shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Those words from the Holy Writ were meant literally, and they can be applied literally if you will govern your body by mind, and not let custom and popular belief make your body the master. Whatever it is right for you to do, you can do without fear, no matter if it entails long continued toil, hardship, or danger. Depend upon it. Your mind can call to your aid all the forces of nature if they are necessary to your emergency. Therefore I say unto you, quoth the Master, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, or what you shall drink, nor yet for your body, what you shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body than raiment? Diet, exercise, and rules of health never kept anyone well of themselves. Often they attract the mind to the subject of sickness and thereby foster it. Dieting is good insofar as it prevents gluttony. Temperance is just as important in eating as in the drinking of alcoholic liquor. But you can eat in moderation anything you like, anything that you relish and believe to be good for you, without fear of its disagreeing with you. Reasonable exercise, too, is fine for both the body and the mind, provided you do not make a fetish of it. It isn't the exercise that keeps you well. It is the mental image you hold in your thought. The exercise merely helps to impress that mental image on your subconscious mind. Electrical treatments, skin tonics, alcohol rubs, etc., all are useful only to the extent that they center the attention of the subconscious mind upon the parts affected. Exactly the same results, even to that pleasant little tingling of the skin, can be effected by mind alone. I remember reading an article by Mrs. Vance Cheney. telling how she cured herself of paralysis of the legs in just that way. After lying for months under the care of doctors and masseurs, she tired of them and decided to depend entirely upon mind. So, several times a day, she would utterly relax in every nerve and muscle. Then consciously send her thought down along the nerves of her legs to her feet. Presently, there would be that little tingling sensation in her feet, evidence of increased circulation, followed after a time by a feeling of drowsiness. A few weeks of these treatments completely restored the use of her legs. The same effort can be made to throw off any physical trouble. Put your hand upon the part affected. Try to visualize that organ as it should be. See it functioning perfectly. Believe that it is working normally again. Your thought brings the blood to the affected part, clears up the trouble, provides new cells, new tissue, while your belief that the organ is functioning properly will bring about the normal conditions. This is a treatment, however, that must be used with discretion, for to consciously interfere in the regular functioning of the body without any real need for such interference results in confusion rather than help. It is like going down a flight of stairs rapidly. Pay no attention to the movement of your feet, and they flit over the steps with never a sign of hesitancy or faltering. But try to watch them step by step, and you will either have to slow up or you will presently miss a step, stumble, or fall. The centipede was happy quite until the toad, for fun, said, "Pray which leg goes after which?" This stirred his mind to such a pitch, he lay distracted in a ditch, considering how to run. There is one rule that will help anyone keep healthy. That rule is to forget your nerves. Throw away your pills and your medicine bottles and hold before your mind's eye only the perfect image that universal mind has of your body. That is the surest way to keep free from sickness. And if you are already sick, the same rule applies. Know that universal mind never created disease, that it is but an illusion of your conscious mind. Know that mind is the only creator, that as Shakespeare puts it, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Know that you have the say as to what the thinking shall be. Know, therefore, that by holding a perfect image of your body in your thoughts, you can make your body perfect. Have you ever cut your finger? Who was it coagulated the blood, stopped the gash, wove new skin? Who was it called upon the little phagocytes to come and kill the septic germs? Not your conscious mind, certainly. Most people don't even know there are any such animals. Their conscious minds don't know the first thing about healing. Whence comes the information? Whence the directing genius? Where but from the same intelligence that keeps your heart and lungs on the job while you sleep, that regulates your liver and your kidneys, that attends to all the functions of your body. That intelligence is your subconscious mind. With the proper cooperation on your part, your subconscious mind will attend to these duties indefinitely, keeping your every organ perfect, your every function regular as clockwork. But it is exceedingly amenable to suggestion. Worry about sickness or contagion, hold before it the thought that you are getting old or that some organ is becoming feeble, and it will be perfectly agreeable to bringing about that condition you suggest. Convince it that there is no danger from contagion. Hold before it the thought of health and strength, and it will be just as prompt in manifesting them. So what you must realize is this: before anything can be made, there must be a model for it in mind. Before a house can be built, there must be a plan, a blueprint from which to build. Before you were created, universal mind held in thought the model on which you were made. That model was perfect then, is perfect now. The only idea of you that universal mind knows is a perfect model, where every cell and organism is formed along perfect lines. True, Many of us have built up imperfect models in our own thoughts, but we can get rid of them just as rapidly as we get rid of the fear of them. Your body is changing every moment. Every cell, every organism is constantly being rebuilt. Why rebuild along the old imperfect lines? Why not build on the lines held in the thought of universal mind? You can do it, but the essence of it lies in the words of the Master. Whatsoever things ye desire when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. It matters not what your ailment may be. It will respond to that treatment. Suppose, as an example, that your stomach has been troubling you, that you cannot eat what you would like, that you cannot assimilate your food, that you are weak and nervous in consequence. Every morning when you awake and every night just before you drop off to sleep, say to yourself, my stomach has neither intelligence nor feeling. It functions only as mind directs it. Therefore, I need have no worry about its being weak or diseased, for the only image that mind knows of stomach is its perfect image, and that perfect image can assimilate or remove anything I may put into it. It is perfect, as everything that universal mind makes is perfect, and being perfect, it can do anything right I may ask of it without fear or anxiety. Concentrate on the organ at a time and repeat this formula to yourself night and morning. Say it, feel it, believe it. And you can do what you please with that organ. As thy faith is, so be it done unto thee. Suffer little children to come unto me. I can believe all you say about my fears and worries being responsible for my own illnesses, write many people. But how about infants and little children? They have no fear. Why do they sicken and die? What many people do not understand is that the subconscious mind is just as amenable to suggestion from those round about you as it is from your own conscious mind. Otherwise, you would be in no danger from anything you did not consciously know of, and the more ignorant you were, the safer you would be. Suppose, for instance, you took a draught of what you believed to be pure bootleg whiskey, but which in reality was no more than wood alcohol. Many others have done it. Your conscious mind would expect no harm from it, any more than did theirs. You would have no fear of the result. No more did they. So you would say, you should experience no harm. Yet you would probably die, or at least go blind, as have these others. Why? Because your subconscious mind would know the wood alcohol for what it is. Your own conscious belief and the preponderance of opinion of those about you have instilled the conviction in your subconscious mind that wood alcohol is dire poison. Therefore, when you pour this poison into your system, even though you do not consciously recognize it as such, your subconscious mind proceeds to bring about the effects you would logically expect such a poison to produce. It is the same with contagion, with the hundreds of diseases which most people scarcely know the names of, but to which they are constantly falling victims. They don't know they have been exposed to contagion. They don't know that their systems are in such condition that certain diseases logically follow. But their subconscious minds do know it, and they have so thoroughly educated those minds to believe in the necessity for ill health, in the inevitability of sickness under certain conditions. The subconscious proceeds to work out the contagion or the condition to its logical conclusion. Grown people can change these subconscious convictions by the proper counter-suggestions consciously given. But young children cannot reason. They accept the beliefs that are held by the generality of mankind, or that are strongly suggested to them by those nearest to them. That is why babies and young children fall such easy victims to the fears of disease and contagion of their parents and those about them. That is why worry over a seeming epidemic so often results in the children catching it, even when they have apparently been in no way exposed to the contagion. Man, says a famous writer, often has fear stamped upon him before his entrance into the outer world. He is reared in fear. All his life is passed on in bondage of fear of disease and death, and thus his whole mentality becomes cramped, limited, and depressed, and his body follows its shrunken pattern and specification. Is it not surprising that health exists at all? Nothing but the boundless divine love, exuberance, and vitality constantly poured in, even though unconsciously to us, could in some degrees neutralize such an ocean of morbidity. But the remedy is just as simple. Know that your children are primarily children of God, that the image He holds of them is perfect, and that His perfect image has within itself every power necessary to ward off disease of any kind. Put your children actively under His care. Throw the responsibility upon Him. Depend upon it, when you do this in the right way, no harm can come near them. Whenever fear assails you, whenever your children are exposed to danger or contagion, realize that He shall give His angels, His thoughts, charge over them, to lead them in all their ways. If your children are sick or ailing, read these thoughts aloud to them, just as though you were talking to a grown person. Only address yourself to their subconscious minds. Read over the past few pages. Repeat to them the little formula outlined above, adapting it to their own particular need. Above all, believe it. Your faith will work just as great wonders for your children as for yourself. Never doubt, never fear. Go at your problem just as you would approach a difficult problem in mathematics. In mathematics, you know that the problem does not exist for which you cannot find the solution, provided you follow the rules and work in the right way. As long as you do your part, the principle of mathematics will do the rest. It is the same in all of life. Don't worry. Don't fret. Go at your problem in the right way, no matter how difficult it may seem. Follow the rules herein laid down, and you can confidently look to the principle of being to bring you the answer. L'Envoi. The kingdom of heaven is like unto a treasure hid in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hiddeth, and for joy thereof goeth and selleth all that he hath, and buyeth that field. This field is your own consciousness, a treasure you find within yourself, which others cannot see, but you know it for the indwelling Spirit, the Father within you, and are willing to sell all that you have because this treasure is worth more than all other possessions. If you have begun to realize this treasure and use it even in a small way, the most wonderful thing that can happen to anyone on this planet has happened to you. What does it mean? It means that an ordinary human being, afflicted with all the sufferings and fears and worries and superstitions of the average man, has learned the law of being. It means that he has acquired a power above all that of his would-be destroyers. It means that he has put his foot upon the rock of life, that the doorway of heaven is open before him, that all of good is as free to him as the air he breathes. There hath not failed one word of all his good promises, and we declare unto you glad tidings, how that the promise which has made unto the fathers, God hath fulfilled the same unto us. Surely we have every reason to be grateful for all the good around about us. Surely, we should be thankful for the infinite power that has been given to us. And being truly grateful, by the way, is the surest evidence of real life that there is. Faith, is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Remember, when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, how he first prayed, then thanked the Father for answering his prayer? There was not yet any material evidence that the prayer had been answered, but Jesus had perfect faith in the Father, and it was justified. Immediately he had given thanks, Lazarus came forth from the tomb. The world today is so much more wonderful than it was to former generations. Mankind has begun to glimpse its illimitable powers. The whole world is plastic and sensitive to new ideas. The soul of man is finding itself and learning its relation to the infinite. The veil between the visible and the invisible is being drawn aside. Through seeing the Father do the works, we are becoming more assured of our own power, beginning to assert the Father that is within us. We know that, given the right understanding, the works that Jesus did, we can do also. We recognize his miracles as divinely natural laws, part of God's continuous plan. So let us go with him onto the Mount of Vision, taking as our motto his words, "See that thou make all things according to the pattern shewed thee in the mount." End of chapter 24. And also end of the reading of the book titled Secret of the Ages by Robert Collier. Thank you for joining me on this. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Make sure you leave me your comment. Let me know you are here. Hit that like button. Keep me here on the web. And subscribe to my channel. Share this with your friends. Make sure to come back often to see what else we have on the channel, Fortune Forecast.